1996 murder of rapper Tupac Shakur. A grand jury indicted Duane Davis on one count of murder with a deadly weapon. Davis is one of the last witnesses to the drive-by shooting that killed Shakur. He is believed to have ordered the death of the rapper, according to prosecutors. Let's bring in Lena Noziwe. She's a journalist who's been following the investigation on her podcast. Tupac's murder was his case. So what can you tell us about Duane Davis and his relationship with the rapper?
Well, one thing is both Keefe, also that's really what he was known on the streets, and Orlando Anderson, they were there the night Biggie died, and nobody ever has denied that, and the night that Tupac was killed as well. So their names have been, from the very first time I did the story in 2007, their names have been part of the case. I said them in my stories from the beginning.
Did you always have a sense that it was Davis? Was that kind of your instinct based on the evidence in your reporting?
Well, it was more that you knew Orlando Anderson was involved, his nephew. So that's what, and the two men were, as I said, together at two of the deadliest nights in rap.
Yeah. So it's been decades. What was the significant breakthrough for law enforcement?
Well, it's a very good question, because in my podcast, I interview one of the original investigators. And he told me that when he was investigating the case some 30 years ago, he put together a floppy disk in which he came to conclusions on who killed Tupac. And the names are the same names that we're hearing, Keefe and Orlando Anderson, almost 30 years later. The question is, and it was brought up during the news conference today, why now? Why is there an arrest now? It's because there's corroboration. There's one thing for the investigators to suspect who did it, but now they were able to get some corroboration.
And what was the corroboration?
Well, that remains to be seen. They went in with a search warrant and they looked around. They looked at GPD's computer. He had written a book confessing to the murder or being involved with Tupac's murder. And so we have to believe that it was something found on his computer, the files, perhaps an earlier edition of his book, but that's information that we don't know. It's not been public yet, but they did say today that they found corroboration.
Lena Noziwe, we'll have to have you back when we find out more about that corroboration. And thank you for your diligence and sort of firsthand accounting of this murder for decades. Really appreciate your analysis.
This is wild here, with Tupac Shakur. 27 years later, they was able to crack this case here. They said the case originated in May 1996 when Orlando Baby Lane, that's his nickname, Anderson. So, with Anderson, he assaulted Trevion Trey Lane, who was associated at the time of Death Row Records. And, that was ran by Suge Knight and Tupac when he was rising to fame. He joined Death Row, and this was at a shoe store. So this was the night and Mike Tyson had that fight with Bruce Seldon, the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. So, Anderson, he told, Trey Lane told that Anderson was in the lobby, and Tupac Shakur, he went over there and assaulted him, right? And so I think this is really kind of carried on to a retaliation, right, from the Crips, okay? Now, Keefe D, at the time, he was there, him and four men. He was in a white Cadillac. And he didn't shoot. Well, according to his memoir, he said, I couldn't shoot him. I did have the gun with me, but he had Anderson, I guess, his nephew, to go ahead and shoot it because he didn't have a good shot. He didn't have great aim. And because they pulled up from a white Cadillac on the side, the passenger side of Tupac. So I was like, man, and just shot him 4 times right in his lung. Everywhere, man. And later on, he was treated at the hospital, but he ended up dying 6 days later. And they shot him with the .40 S&W Glock 22. Man, it's crazy, man. and he actually suffered a caused respiratory failure and cardiac arrest, man. Anderson was arrested in the gang suite 1 month later. And get this, too. The investigators interviewed Anderson and identified him as the man in the surveillance footage, but did not charge or arrest him, believing the person in the footage could not have killed Shakur. So Lieutenant Larry Spinoza told reporters, at that point, Orlando Anderson is not a suspect in the shooting of Tupac Shakur. So it was 2 months after the shooting in November 96. Yakati Gaddafi, he was a New Jersey native and a member of Shakur's group, Outlaws, was murdered in a housing project in Irvington, New Jersey. So Gaddafi, who famously appeared on the diss track, hit him up. So he was riding behind Shakur, and actually he was a key witness at the time of the shooting. So he initially refused to cooperate with police, but later said he could possibly identify their silence, but he died before the interview. So I think that's over the years that kind of prolonged, reaching a resolution for the case. They said in March 97 they were in the car directly behind Shakur at the time of the murder. His bodyguard, Frank Alexander, EDI. Alexander said he saw the killer's face, which EDI means said he saw all 4 men in the vehicle. So by September 97, 1 year after the shooting, Las Vegas Metro Police had no leads. The lead investigator was Sergeant Kevin Manny. They were at a standstill. Anderson, who was briefly a suspect but never arrested, charged, and he was the one who was known for suing Shakur's estate. So Tupac had he was suing his estate at the time, claiming he suffered physical injuries and he suffered emotional mental stress, right? So that's just a response to that assault charge, though. But lack of progress in the murder case, Anderson for wrongful death. Her lawyer, Richard Feisbing, the Las Vegas police have as much interest in solving this crime as the man on the moon. Man, dude. Just couldn't believe it, man. But with Keefe D, though, I know DJ Vlad, months ago, he ended up interviewing Keefe D, and I was discussing about his memoir, because saying that he confessed in killing Tupac, but also too that he has some type of involvement with it. So, man, he was a Crip, like I said. He's 60 years old, because Tupac Shakur was actually on his way to perform at the 662 Club, due to a charity event. But it's unfortunate, man. I'm just glad that we finally gonna get some resolution here. It seemed like Las Vegas Police Department is extremely satisfied with this, man. But also too, it was exhausting at the same time, man. I mean, 27 years, man, solving this case, man. And also, too, with Biggie Smalls died, too. I'm like, man, this is crazy, man. But at the end of the day, man, this is some extremely crazy news here. But until I get any additional information, I'm going to go ahead and just continuously to talk about it. But that's just what we have right now, according to this article from Pitchfork. Also, too, you can look this up on CBS News. I'm going to read this a little bit here. They said February 2018, Davis said he was in the front passenger seat of the car that carried Shakur's murder when shots were fired, but he declined to name the shooter. He claimed the car was driven by Terrence T. Brown, and that Anderson and DeAndre Dre Smith were in the back seat, and that the shooter was in the back seat. So he was there present, but the shooter was in the back seat, according to him. By then, all 3 men had died. So, yeah, man. All the witnesses and stuff like that, but we'll see. This is the guy here, Keefe D, has some affiliation with the killing of Tupac Shakur. It could be the person who killed him is probably no longer living, but Keefe D only knows, right? So guilty by association, man. But that's all we have to say. You guys continue to like, comment, subscribe, share this video. This is your boy Link Jr. I'm out. Deuces.